Joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, criminal defense attorney Ecleynne Mercy joining us from Atlanta. Brad Micklin is with us from New Jersey, my home state. And Silva Megaditchian joining us, criminal defense attorney from L.A. Great to have you all aboard. The one thing that jumped out to me, Ecleynne, and we don't know the circumstances, exactly what it is, but the prosecutor pointed out that one of the manners of concealment of one of these children, and we're talking about remains of children, was egregious. Egregious. It sounds like something awful happened to that child.
Yeah, but they have to prove it. Unfortunately, well, the defense attorney was actually right. For the purposes of bail, if he's only just charged with the deposit of the remains, I mean, you need to post bail upon, based on that. I mean, I think the defense attorney was right in which you can't have a prosecution doing a fishing expedition. If they had enough, then you arrest him and charge him with that. But if you're just going to hold him and wait until you get more, it is unconstitutional.
Silva, I don't like when Ecleynne starts throwing the Constitution around in the first question, but she did. I understand the Constitution. But I also understand, Silva, that Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy, died in that same house, and you've got two children buried in the backyard. There's an investigation into the death of his wife, whose body's been exhumed, and now they have, I guess, sort of exhumed the remains of these two children in the backyard. Last time I saw him, he was walking around in Hawaii. I think there's a danger to the community and a risk of flight here.
You know what? Let me first start, Vinny, by saying Ecleynne is absolutely correct. And we're defense attorneys. We are guardians of the Constitution. And it's imperative that the court follows that. However, the public outcry in this case is also ruling the judge. And it's notable. I mean, these guys have gotten away with so much carnage without anything happening. I mean, Vallow got rid of her ex, and the brother took the blame, and I think something's going to come of that. Then you have Daybell and suspicious circumstances with his ex, well, not even ex, they were still married, and then marrying Vallow just days after her death without investigation. Then you have these two innocent, beautiful children missing since September, and they're out frolicking in Hawaii when the whole public knows something, how horrific happened to these children. And these children, grandparents actually went to the media and said, please get them. So that passion, Vinny, that you have in the social outcry, I think it had a huge effect on what the judge said. Because Ecleynne and I both know as criminal defense attorneys, that defense attorney did what he had to do. His arguments were on point and correct. But Vinny, you started this segment correctly. That secret affidavit, it has a lot, and we're going to find out what that is, and it's going to be gruesome, it's going to be ugly, and I think that's going to very clearly show a conspiracy between mother and this new man killing these children.
You know, Brad, Lady Justice may be blind, but Lady Justice should not be oblivious to the obvious, should she?
No, I agree, Vinny. I mean, this case is plagued with deaths all around. I mean, both of the defendants have dead spouses. I think Lori's spouse was killed by her brother, who later then died also. And now we have this cryptic description about how one of the bodies was found. We don't know if it was some torture, was it burning, was there sexual abuse? And they're being very cryptic about it. I'm not really sure why that is, but I think it's going to turn out to be a very interesting piece to this puzzle once we all get together with it.
All right. Stay where you are, everyone. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. Where we're going to talk about some other things. We're going to talk about what the actual charges are, but how do we get from there to the charges everyone's really thinking about, which are murder charges? And not just for Chad Daybell. How about Lori Vallow Daybell, the one who lied about where her kids were when they were buried in her husband's backyard?
My neighbor posted on Facebook, she's like, hey, my front yard is available if someone wants to come do some chalk art about the case and things like that. And my husband's like, our yard too. And I'm like, okay. So then like, Ashley, you should make some posters. I'm like, okay. So we made these posters, and the first one's given, like, we want justice for the children. And the second poster is kind of about just parenting in general, and kind of sums up how I've been feeling lately about all of this, is that as parents we have an obligation and responsibility to take care of our children.
And you know, this story is striking a lot of resemblance to when that little girl went missing down in Orlando, Florida, Kaylee Marie, and the way the public is reacting to it, and the way the public is connecting with those children, and the way the public is looking for justice. And that's where we are right now. JJ and Tylee went missing, and now human remains found in Chad Daybell's backyard. Let me put up the charges that Chad Daybell's actually facing, because they are not murder charges. Let's take a look at them. You're talking about the destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence, 2 counts, up to 5 years of imprisonment and or up to $10,000 fine. And this is all a result of them discovering these remains in his backyard. But here's what you have to think about, folks, is, all right, you know 2 + 2 = 4, right? So 4 is we've got these remains in the backyard. But how did we get there? What did they have to put together to get there? Because you don't just willy-nilly start searching. You need probable cause. You need a basis. You need to go to a judge, get a warrant. So what information do prosecutors have? And is that information that they have going to be useful in turning what is now a destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence charge on the case of Chad Daybell, and for Lori Vallow Daybell, desertion of her children, and transform those charges into murder charges? Let's bring back in the think tank. Silva, let me start with you. I think investigators, and you've got the FBI working on this, you've got the Sheriff's Department out there, you got folks from Arizona who are working on this, you've got obviously at Rexburg PD in the middle of this, steering all of this. They had to have some really good information that led them to where they went in the backyard very specifically. I think whatever information they got may be part of what will be used against them in trying to put this and make this into a murder case.
Absolutely. And I think it's further complicated, Vinny, because, again, you have these 2 very prominent characters. You have Vallow, you have Daybell. And what's interesting about Vallow, too, is being the mother with the children. It's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. We know that Daybell is this, God, I don't want to say crazy cult member, but he's writing all of these books about end of days, about how almost demon-like things take over bodies. I think it's going to come out that the warrant was done on his property because he encouraged, aided in the mom taking action against her children, because the children trust their mom more than anything. So I feel like this is really going to open up into a very proper investigation. I think they're being very careful right now. Let's face it, those charges, I don't think, are going to last very long currently with a 5-year max. It's going to go very quickly into murder charges, conspiracy charges, grotesque child abuse charges, you name it. It's going to be a Pandora's box of horrific charges that will carry life sentence, if not the death penalty.
Ecleynne, let's get back to our Constitution that you brought with you tonight. You can't just go on someone's property and start digging up holes, right? The Constitution says you can't do that. You need probable cause. You need evidence. I think they've got the evidence, Ecleynne.
I don't know. I don't know how they connect. There has to be a connection to the backyard. If we need more than a hunch. We need more than conspiracy theories. We need more than pages in a book. We actually need probable cause, trustworthy facts that a crime has actually been committed. And we don't have exigent circumstances to say that, hey, they're currently, needing help at this point. So I'm curious to find out how the prosecutor is going to connect it. I feel that the only thing that they were able to connect is with the desecration of the remains afterwards. It's kind of analogous to the cheerleader and the dead infant case. She also buried her child in the backyard. And she also was charged with desecrating remains, and she was found guilty of that and not guilty of the actual murder. So the prosecutors need to make it make sense. I understand all the theories, but if you can't put it together, if we all we have is hunches and things of that nature, I don't know if it's going to stick.
Right, all right, and you've got to prove homicide, death at the hands of another. But here you have not one but two children. So we're not talking about natural causes here. We're not talking about two accidents, right? Like Casey Anthony was trying to sell to that jury that it was accidental. Well, you got an accident for JJ and an accident for Tylee. We know it's not suicide. It's going to be homicide. It's just going to be. Brad, let me ask you something. Or let me point out another fun fact for Chad Daybell. You know what his former career was? Grave digger. He was a grave digger. The guy was a grave digger before he started his so-called enlightenment. The guy was digging graves, and guess what they dug up in the back of his yard? A grave for two missing children.
It's an interesting twist. I knew he was an author of very dark books related to death and possibly the occult. I didn't know he was a gravedigger. It's going to be highly relevant when we look to the fact that coincidentally they found bodies in the backyard. You know, there's a lot of talk about whether they had sufficient cause to get a warrant, whether or not there's a Fourth Amendment issue. I have to assume that it wasn't just a coincidence. I have to assume they did have specific facts. They got a proper warrant, let's assume and hope, and they had specific information pointing them to finding these children in the backyard.
And Vinny, if I may chime in
Ecleynne,
too,
would you consider gravedigger a bad fact?
No, well, it's bad for the defendant. I feel that my issue is, when was this grave digger information unearthed? If we had that information maybe a couple of weeks ago, I think that a warrant would have been able to be, a warrant could be issued based on all of those facts and circumstances. Hey, we have a grave digger. We have two children that we cannot find. They're connected. Maybe we should look into his backyard. I think that argument could have been made weeks ago. Why now? I don't understand.
Silva, go ahead. You were going to jump in there.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up one thing also about exigent circumstances. Let's also not forget that there was an assumption that these children were still alive. And a lot of times for finding children who are missing, I don't think the officers wanted to assume, or anybody involved in this investigation, that they were killed. I think the public kind of assumed it, but no one wanted to believe it. And it is true that they might have a little bit of leeway with that warrant when it comes to making sure the children were safe. But a lot does ride on how the investigators conducted the investigation to find the children in the yard. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it turns out. But again, you have so many agencies involved. I think I hope they're not going to make a lot of mistakes when it comes to the investigation.
All right, we've got a lot more to talk about on this case. We're going to do it a little bit later in the program, getting your reaction on social media. Go to my Facebook page, Vinny Politan Court TV. Vinny Politan Court TV. Let me know what you think. While you're there, follow the page. Next, Ted Rowlands, doing what Ted Rowlands does best. I mean, he is the investigative journalist. He went down to Ahmaud Arbery's neighborhood where he was shot down at Satilla Shores, went down to Brunswick, Georgia. He's going to retrace Ahmaud's final steps when we come back.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae with your Court TV news break. We begin with this just into our newsroom. In the case of George Floyd, one of the officers charged with manslaughter is out on bail. Thomas Lane, one of those four officers accused in Floyd's death, was released from jail a few hours ago. His bail was set at $750,000. Lane and two other officers were charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. A fourth officer, a veteran on the force, Derek Chauvin, faces more serious charges of second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. All four officers were fired from the Minneapolis Police Department. The other three remain behind bars tonight. If convicted, Lane faces 40 years in prison. And George Floyd's death is sparking changes to the law in New York. State representatives there are looking to overhaul a decades-old law that keeps law enforcement officers' disciplinary records a secret. The state law, known as 50-A, was passed back in the 70s and prevents criminal defense attorneys from subjecting officers to cross-examination about information that may be irrelevant that's in their personnel file. That law, which also applies to prison guards and firefighters, kept formal complaints about excessive force by officers out of the public record, even if that officer was later disciplined. A coalition of police unions argued that releasing these records could be detrimental to the officers. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said if passed, he plans to sign a repeal on that law. And in Connecticut, a university has landed a win in court against one of its student athletes. A federal judge ruled in the University of Connecticut's favor after they were sued over this image you see there. Former UConn soccer player Noriana Radwan there flipping the bird at ESPN's camera back in 2014. Her team had just won a championship, and she sued her school for suspending her from the team and then later yanking her scholarship due to the captured gesture. She argued her punishment was excessive, citing that male athletes were treated differently even after being arrested. The judge agreed with the school's argument, noting that her nationally televised obscenity wasn't similar to those other offenses by other athletes. So Vinny, no recovery for Radwan, but she did finish up her education at another institution.
Yeah, and going back to that story in New York, I mean, that is huge. The criminal defense bar in every state across this country wants their hands on those records and wants to use them at trial and wants to put every police officer on trial when they get on the stand in every single case. This can completely change the way cases are tried. So that's really an important development tonight.
It really could make a lot of changes. A lot of states are watching what's happening, and they are expecting, because of the way their legislature is set up, they do expect it to pass along with several other police accountability bills that have been introduced very recently.
All right, we'll see the impact right here on Court TV. Julie Janae, thank you so much. Ted Rowlands, Court TV anchor, went down to Glynn County, Georgia, went to Satilla Shores and Brunswick, Georgia as well, and took a look at the neighborhood where Ahmaud Arbery was shot and killed. And what he did with our team of journalists down there was to retrace the steps, the last steps of Ahmaud, and really give us a clearer picture of what it is like and what it was like inside that neighborhood.
We're in the neighborhood where Ahmaud Arbery was shot and killed, retracing his steps. We want to start here with the house that was under construction. The video from inside the home shows that Ahmaud looks around but doesn't take anything. Across the street, you can see those trees where the neighbor was caught on surveillance video talking to 911.
And he's been caught on the camera a bunch before at night. Kind of an ongoing thing out here.
And you said it was a male in a black t-shirt?
A white t-shirt, black guy, white t-shirt.
Ahmaud spent several minutes inside the house under construction, and then he moves up Satilla Drive. He starts running towards the McMichaels home, which is 5 houses up on the right-hand side. This is the McMichaels house they were renting. At the time Ahmaud was running by, Greg McMichael was in the front yard cleaning some boat cushions. And what you notice is how small this yard is and how close Ahmaud and Greg were as he was running by. After he runs by, Greg goes into the house, gets Travis, they both get their guns and jump into their pickup trucks as Ahmaud continues to run down the street. We don't know whether or not he realized that he was going to be chased.
Greg McMichael arms himself with a Smith & Wesson 6.86 .357 Magnum revolver. Travis McMichael arms himself with a Remington 870 12-gauge shotgun.
Ahmaud continues down Satilla Drive. He runs past Holmes Road and heads down to the next street, which is Burford Road. Satilla is a dead end here, so his only choice really is to go towards Burford. The roads here are very narrow. Ahmaud is essentially trapped in this neighborhood. By this time, the McMichaels have caught up to Ahmaud in their pickup. Ahmaud is approaching William Roddy Bryant's home, which is going to be coming up on the left-hand side after this group of trees. This is Roddy Bryant's house. His home surveillance video that has not been released to the public picks up what happens next.
In the video, you actually see Bernard trying to get away. He's running backwards, truck moving backwards, he's moving forward. He's trying to escape at that point in the video.
Roddy then joins the chase, getting into his pickup. At some point, Ahmaud switches directions and comes back up Burford Road, getting past the McMichaels truck. But Roddy is now out in the road with his truck. By the time Ahmaud gets to where Roddy Bryant's home is, Bryant's truck is in the middle of the road. The McMichaels are behind him. He's trapped in between these two pickup trucks. Ahmaud gets past Roddy, but he hits his pickup, leaving fibers from his T-shirt behind. He then runs down Satilla to Holmes Road. He runs down Holmes and then doubles back again. Now, Roddy Bryant is behind Ahmaud and starts taking that video from his cell phone. The McMichaels are waiting for Ahmaud. Their pickup is parked in the road. Greg McMichael is in the back. Travis, shotgun in hand, is outside the driver's side. This is where it all comes to an end, at the corner of Satilla and Holmes, where Ahmaud and Travis McMichael struggle, where Ahmaud is shot 3 times by Travis McMichael before falling to the ground. And it's also where Travis McMichael uttered those words, N-word, the last 2 words possibly that Ahmaud Arbery heard in his life. There's a small memorial marking the spot where he died with flowers and a small plaque.
Small, quiet neighborhood. I mean, narrow streets. I mean, the picture you paint there, you can see how it just happens so quickly, but nowhere to go. These are not wide roads. There's nowhere to go. 2 pickups chasing you. Let's bring back in our think tank, Brad Ecleynne. That's my takeaway from taking a look at this neighborhood, that it is going to be very, and I'd like to have a jury view. I want the jury to go to the neighborhood. I want them to see what Ted saw, which is how narrow those roads are, how close the houses and the yards are to the road, and how you could get trapped and feel trapped and be entrapped inside that neighborhood.
Well, here, Vinny's actually one of the few times I disagree with you, but for not an opposite reason. I think if he were truly running from the drivers, he would have stayed on the road. He would have veered to the side. He would zigzag into the grass. I think he was just jogging. I think that he was jogging. I think they hunted him down. I think they killed him. And no matter how broad the laws in Georgia might be about defending property or stand your ground, there's nothing in this video that suggests that they did anything but hunt down and shoot this man.
Ecleynne, I heard your voice.
Oh yeah, he's right. They sought him out and they murdered him, which bothers me even more because officers were there at the scene afterwards. That means that they did no investigation. It did not take much to find out that they murdered this man, but all the defendants were free to roam for 2 months. So we have a video, which nobody asked for audio, which apparently officers saw at the scene and let them go. My issue is,
well, here, Ecleynne, I got to jump in here, Ecleynne, because the police, and this is police versus lawyers now, okay? Police have been thrown under the bus and under fire, we know, across the country, but right here. My understanding is that the police were told by the DA to let them go. So
that's,
I don't know what the truth is, but that's what the police are saying here.
But then, are you supposed to muck up the police report? Are you supposed to state that it wasn't it? At what point? So my thing is that whole system is messed up then. If you have police answering to DAs, which DAs answer to police, it's supposed to be separate so that we can have this checks and balances. My issue is that at no point did officers that we pay for say, hey, this was a homicide, because it was blatant. At no point did they see to talk to anybody else. Did anybody make an announcement or did anybody talk to a supervisor saying that this man was murdered? They had audio. If anybody heard the audio, all of them should have been arrested at that day. So we have a big issue with Glenn County. My issue is if the racism is so deep in that system, what type of jury are we going to get? That's my biggest question. If Glenn County public officials were okay with letting these 3 murderers loose, what type of jury are we going to get? Is justice for Ahmaud Arbery, is that really a thing that we can strive for? And I'm concerned. I'm very concerned now.
Yeah, Silva, Greg McMichael worked for the DA's office. After he called 911, the testimony at the prelim was that he then called the DA's office. So they were in on this from the beginning, the DA's office. So when the DA's office is there and it's a part of everything, I don't know if police generally have the power to override the DA at that point.
Well, honestly, DAs are the ones that put the charge together, right? And that's when the process begins in court. What's interesting, though, and what speaks also to what Brad and Ecleynne both said, this is the 3rd prosecutor. 2 of them had to recuse themselves. It is a mess when it comes to the amount of mud that the DA's office, talk about lack of respect, talk about lack of trust. I mean, again, I don't mean to keep on saying that Ecleynne and Brad are right, but they're right too. You have to, this whole process, the court system is based on the public trusting the process and the public knowing that justice will be served. The video is so undeniably clear that it was a hunt. It was a game to these people to be in their cars. And honestly, I don't even think this young man thought that he was getting chased down. You wonder, what are this man's final thoughts, his state of mind? I mean, being a runner, again, you're running every day. You see cars going back and forth. It is your time of solace. I think it's pretty clear that he was out on a jog. Look at what he's wearing. You don't really feel that cars are going to chase you down and hunt you like an animal. And I think that's the biggest issue in this case. Again, the public outcry, the prosecutors having to recuse themselves, and the video finally coming out was the correct storm to give a proper telling, a narrative of what truly happened. This law cannot protect these 2 for taking so-called justice in their hands
I don't think it will.
someone.
I don't think it
There's
will.
no way.
We shall see.
The process doesn't work.
When we come back, we will hear from you, the 13th juror, speaking out. Social media blowing up tonight. We'll be right back.
With regards to the criminal complaint, it was filed dated June 10th, 2020. There are 2 counts in the criminal complaint. The first count is destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence, a felony, a violation of Idaho Code 182603. The maximum punishment for that charge is up to 5 years in the state penitentiary and/or up to a $10,000 fine. The allegation is that the defendant, Chad Guy Daybell, on or between the 22nd day of September 2019 and the 9th day of June 2020, in the county of Fremont, state of Idaho, did willfully conceal and/or aid and abet another to willfully conceal human remains, knowing that said human remains were about to be produced, used, and/or discovered as evidence in a felony proceeding.
Chad Daybell arrested, locked up. Looks a little skinny, doesn't he? Maybe a little bit worried over the past couple months about what was happening. Now human remains dug up in his backyard of 2 children. No murder charges yet, but today was his first appearance in court, and we've got an incredible reaction from the 13th juror. Let's start with our comment of the day. It comes from Julie, who says, "So sad about the findings. I'm wondering now, too, if they will turn on each other. Feel for the grandparents, we all do, hoping they have enough to charge them both with murder and seek the death penalty." Ecleynne Mercy, you know human nature. Do you think Lori and her newlywed husband, Chad, they had so much fun down in Hawaii, you think they'll turn on each other?
I mean, I think that he is a writer. I think that if he's a writer, I think that he's more pragmatic. I think that if he did do it, that he has a plan, and that if they had time to really yuck it up in Hawaii, that the plan will be as written. I think that he's a smart person because he wasn't found. He's not charged with murder at this point. He's only charged with desecrating the body. So I'm really curious to see what type of story comes out of it. We have a writer here. It's basically Stephen King, like in real life. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out.
All right, Leanne tonight writes, I pray that the state launches murder charges against them both and revokes their bails. My feeling is that she murdered or had these kids murdered out of revenge for not receiving Charles's life insurance. I also believe that Tylee was going to start talking about what really happened to Charles. Silva, that's getting into motive. Do you think prosecutors have to dive into motive here if they're going to go after murder charges?
Oh, there's no doubt. I find it interesting, again, going off a little bit by what Ecleynne said too, just what to develop the story of what these two are going to say. I have a feeling that Vallow might come out or at some sort of defense and say that she was maybe brainwashed. I can see that happening. This is a deep religious faith that he kind of brought her into. If she was smart, the defense would be of this overwhelming overshadowing of a brainwashing by him. So it's going to be interesting, as you said, to see will they turn on each other or will they stick together. It's fascinating.
Tammy tonight, I do not care who did the murders of these sweet children. Colt mom, Daybell, or even the brother, Alex Cox, who is dead, by the way. They are all equally guilty. I hope they get a jury set and a quick trial date. I hope the sentencing for both is life with no chance of parole. Never, ever. My heart goes out to the grandparents who never have given up finding them. Brad, let me ask you, is this a case where the defense might ask for a speedy trial? They might ask for a trial to happen before July 22nd, which is, according to them, that's the day, that's the end of the world, the end of civilization.
It's hard to say. The only reason that defendants in a case like this would want a speedy trial is if they believe that the prosecutor or the state hasn't put together enough evidence to charge one or both of them with murder. But I think this is ultimately going to become a race to the prosecutor's office. I think that once the prosecutors have enough evidence to charge one of them, especially if it's the weaker of the two, let's say that Daybell's case isn't so strong. I think they go to him and say, we'll take the death penalty off if you flip on Lori, or vice versa. And one of them will do it. So the only reason they'd want to rush to a speedy trial is to avoid that possibility.
Francis writes tonight, not surprised it was only a matter of time that these lunatics were caught in the murder of these precious children. Why wasn't a search done sooner? Well, they did, and I'll take this one. They did search Chad Daybell's home back in January. January in Idaho, that ground is frozen, so I don't know if they could dig if they wanted to dig in the back, but maybe they didn't have enough at that time specifically to lead them to the backyard. Maybe something they found inside led them there. Yachty tonight, Chad and his crazy wife should get the death penalty. It's so hard to understand how they could kill the children. Lori and Chad must suffer evil nuts. We only have about 10 seconds here. Ecleynne, is this a death penalty case?
No, I don't think so right now. Not with the facts that we have right now, no.
Okay, more facts coming out. Ecleynne Mercy, Brad Micklin, Silva Megardician, what a great job tonight. Really appreciate your insight and your expertise. Thanks for being on the show. Please come back again. And folks, our coverage continues here on Court TV. We've got a crew live in Idaho for us, digging up every part of this story, every development that happens. You'll hear about it. You'll see it every night here, 8 to 11. This is what we do at Court TV. We're not distracted by things that other networks get distracted by. And we are focused, laser focused on what our mission here is for you, is to track those cases that will be going to trial, trials that you'll see gavel to gavel coverage of right here on Court TV, and to continue covering the cases as they develop, like we're watching what's happening out in Idaho. That's it for tonight, folks. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful night. And don't forget to hug the kids.